Hi, Louise. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Really well, thank you. Really well. How are you, Bev?
I'm good, thanks. Good. So we received a question today. Not that today. We received a question this week. I'm just gonna. I think I'll keep us on small in case the lady comes in. About how do you when you respond? She wrote immaturely when your expectations haven't been fulfilled in a relationship.
Brilliant question.
What comes up for you? I thought it was a great question, and we've heard it so many times. Isn't this kind of guilt, like I didn't respond in the best way I should have? What comes up for you?
I think you're asking me, Bev. Yeah, what comes up for me is this.
Well, as a therapist,
Uh,
what would you? How would you respond to that?
so I think the first thing, and this is always what we come back to anyway, is the self. Is what did that trigger inside of you? Because something can only affect you if you already have that feeling. And so the first thing is perhaps that disappointment in the way you've behaved, that upset in your response, that anger, that resentment, that frustration, that somebody didn't respond in a way that you wanted them to or expected them to in that circumstance. And when we come from a place that everybody is completely unique, everybody's very different, and they are only responding in a way that comes from their experiences, that comes from their programming, comes from the way that they see the world. And I think this is one of the biggest things to get hold of in relationships is everybody is wearing a different pair of glasses and we don't see things the same, but we have great expectations that others perhaps see things as the way we see things. But it is, first of all, a total impossibility, as life is all perspective, absolutely all perspective. And so it's really understanding yourself and where you're coming from, and then having that understanding in that person that perhaps they have a totally different belief system, a different experience of life, a completely different way of seeing things. And I see this in my own life every day, absolutely every day. My mother sees things very, very differently to the way I do. My children do. They see the world very differently. They're much younger than me. They're in their 20s, 30s. They don't see the world as a woman in their mid-50s. They really don't. And all these situations that come up, they will have a different perspective. And if I, continue to go down a route, if you like, of expecting them to react in a certain way, I'm going to be sorely disappointed. And so it comes back to knowing yourself and how would you like to respond in this situation, because you honestly do get to choose how you respond, but you can only do that if you know yourself.
Right.
And that's in a nutshell.
Wow. I love that. And I really want to reiterate because I find sometimes when I'm sitting with clients, they get almost incensed, is maybe a strong word, when I refer to a trigger as having come from a place that they recognize. If it's not on your radar, you won't recognize it, right? And I just think it's such a valuable and important point that we only respond to a hurt that we already have inside. And as you said so beautifully, it comes from a younger place. And that trigger is opening up something, a wound that we haven't healed. And when you say, as in this question, why can't I respond more maturely? Maturely is kind of your wise adult coming to the situation where you can take a breath and say, I want to manage or deal with the person who's in front of me right now, rather than the trigger and the reactivity where so that person appears to you maybe as your mother, as your father, and they've said something to you that's made you react. So the person in front of you here and now is not your partner. It's your parent who's possibly said something to you. And when you come to that realization, hang on, the person in front of me, let me just come to this time, is my partner or my ex, and how do I respond? That's when the mature adult can respond, because otherwise it's your wounded child that's responding, or your adaptive child that's responding. It's a different area that's responding, and that's the reactivity. And that's where we think like, oh, I acted. When you say I act, I want to act more maturely. I don't want to act like a child. It's beautiful. We express it so precisely. I feel I reacted like a scornful little girl, and I could see your face also kind of wrinkling up, I stamped my feet and I said, this is not fair. And then there comes that guilt. Like, why couldn't I be the mature adult?
Thank you, Bev. That's beautifully put, and it always takes us back to those childhood years where those programs and experiences, were created. And as you explained there so wonderfully, it is that little girl coming out of you because she wasn't healed perhaps with what went on at that time. And so again, it's keeping that present moment and really understanding what is going on right now. This situation is very different because the mind is so illogical. It is not logic to, respond to your partner in a way that you would have responded to your mother at the age of 5, or like me, like a screaming banshee at the age of 14 to my mother. There is zero logic in that. So we don't try and make logic out of the mind. It's much more.
That's a great point.
And as you said, that maturity, does come with age, and we gain that wisdom. And that's really what you're gaining all the time, is that wisdom. And the more that you are able to bank that wisdom and understand, how do I want to respond to the given situation? Because that's all you have. The past event is gone. We are not privy and guaranteed a future. We have the present moment. And that's why, mindfulness, etc., can be very helpful to keep us, present.
Right.
Those responses. But as you put, Bev, it's always about, you will not react if you don't already have that emotion. So if anger's triggered inside of you in that experience, that's your anger. That is not the other person making you angry. And sometimes just when we change that language, it can be extremely helpful, because now you can do something about it. It's yours. It's up to you. I can do something about this anger. Whereas if we consistently feel that it's the other person, making me so angry, you are then at a loss because you can't do anything about it. You cannot control that other person and stop making you so angry, which is how I felt for years and years and years, particularly with my mother. It's a very volatile relationship. She makes me so cross, so angry, so frustrated because she doesn't behave in a way that's right. Life is not fair, Actually, life isn't fair, and it's my number one golden rule of happiness, because it's not. There is
exactly. And nobody guaranteed you that it would be.
No,
fair.
It isn't. Some people have cruised through life, seemingly, and then some people go through trauma after trauma. And there's no fairness in life. It's all about how we respond.
Yeah, I always think, just as an aside, but of our conversation, the suffragettes, people always say, they wanted equality. No, they didn't look at prisoner rights. They didn't look at wages for men. They only looked at what they wanted, or for the
example,
the lame or the infirm. They were looking at a specific, and not to put it down, but there isn't any fairness. But what I wanted to just end with, which I thought was so valuable that you brought, is that logic. David Burns puts it so beautifully: when there's a distortion in our thinking, a distortion in our rational way of understanding a situation, when we haven't inquired enough. So almost like the difference, he says, between sadness and depression in terms of a distortion. And I think we all get caught up in this, that sadness, if I've lost someone, sadness is, I'm going to miss that person. They were really a major part of my life. And the result will be that my experience of sadness will expand me, and I'll grow, and I'll be more humane and kinder. Whereas depression is like, I will never find happiness again, which is often the distortion, and I'm just completely in myself, the distortion of the thinking. So I love what you said. It's just not logical, but there's that distortion, which is such a nice. We could also, I mean, if we have a question, the reason I ask answering questions now in our talks, if we have a question that we can pick that up, we can tease it out and see where is the distortion and what do distortions actually look like for us.
Thank you.
Thank you for today. This was great, as always.
Thank you, Bev. Thank you, Bev. It's I always appreciate your wisdom and your great insight, and you know what you do for this world, and it's an honor and a privilege to have these conversations with you. So
I think
thank you for joining us today, and we very much look forward to feedback. Feedback's very important to us because it gives us the more, you know, we can be more focused on what's important for you and what's going on in your world right now, because relationships are probably the most intricate, complicated part of our lives that all of us have to navigate. And there is zero logic in a relationship. There is, you know, they are that we do think, you know, we do suffer from distortion and catastrophization, you know, and they are very, very complex relationships. And so we're here to help you navigate your way through them in the best possible way. And so for us to serve you, it's really helpful that you can let us know what you really want and need right now. So thank you, Bev. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.